Today is Monday, September 11th, 2017, and today we're doing lesson 1.11. That's module 1, lesson 11. And today's learning goal says that I can use what I know about place value, and you know a lot about place value already, to multiply a decimal by a whole number. In this warm-up, we're going to think about what we know about about units. Okay, so if I have this first one, 1.234. Using word form, we would say it's 1 and what? 234 thousandths. But if I want to name the whole thing just using thousandths, how many thousandths would I have? Akshay?
1,234,000.
Good. 1,234 thousandths. Now if I had this number, 65.247, I could say that's how many ones and how many thousandths. Kish?
You can say that's 65 ones and 247,000.
Now what if I wanted to name that same number only using thousandths? No more ones. I want to say the whole thing just using thousandths. How many thousandths do I have, Supan?
65,000.
200. Very good. Okay, interesting. Let's continue looking. What if I had 76.358? How many tens is that? How many tens do I have there, Marvin?
You have 7 tens.
7 tens. And how many thousandths do I have if I take out the 7 tens? Rohan?
6,358.
Very good. 76.358. And we don't want to write it as tens this time. We want to write it in tenths and thousandths. So how many tenths do I have? Go up to the tenths place and see how many tenths do I have. Everyone?
763.
And then how many thousandths do I have left?
58.
Okay. That means that we could solve this problem, 7,258 thousandths plus 1 thousandth, in our head. We just add one more and we keep the same unit. Yes?
Yes.
But how would we write this problem using standard form? What's 7,258 thousandths in standard form? Well, in order to write it in standard form, you just write the digits, 7, 2, 5, 8, in the order you see them. And then you think to yourself, where would I put the decimal point if I want my last number, the 8, to be in the thousandths place? Think to yourself, if I put the decimal point here, would it be in the thousandths place?
No.
No, it would be in the what's place? Ones. If I put the decimal point here, would it be in the thousandths place?
No.
It would be in the
Tens.
What about if I put it here?
Hundreds.
Okay, what about here?
Thousands.
Is that where we want it?
Yes.
Okay, so go ahead and put the decimal point there. And then if I'm going to add 1 thousandth, we know that in standard form 1 thousandth is 0.001, isn't it? And then our answer would be 7.259. Now today we're talking about multiplication. Multiplication, is it the same thing as repeated addition?
Yeah.
So is 3 times 0.2 the same thing as 0.2 plus 0.2 plus 0.2?
Yeah.
Yeah, multiplication is just the same thing as repeatedly adding. So we're adding it 3 times because we're doing 3 times 0.2. Is that the same thing as making 3 copies of 0.2?
Yeah.
Do you see how I wrote 0.2 1, 2, 3 times? So I want you to write here 3 copies of 0.2. Okay, now let's see how we can use a picture to model this. On your place value chart, your PVC, how do I model 0.2 or 2 tenths? 3 copies of 2 tenths. Oh, sorry. By the way, instead of writing 3 copies of 0.2, write 3 copies of 2 tenths. That was my mistake. How do I show 2 tenths? Well, I can draw 1, 2 dots in the tenths column. Do you see that now I have 2 tenths? Now, how many copies of that am I trying to make? 3. So how many copies did I draw so far? 1. Here's the second copy, and here's the third copy. Do you see how I drew 3 copies of 2 tenths there?
Yeah.
Okay. What do I have altogether?
6.
6 tenths. So 3 copies of 2 tenths is 6 tenths. And here's how you show that using the standard algorithm. You can say 0.2 times 3 equals 6 tenths, or 0.6. Now, be careful. Did I line up in multiplication? Did I line up my numbers in a place value chart here? No, because here's the tenths and here's the ones. Multiplication is different than addition and subtraction. Raise your right hand. I know that when I add and subtract, I need to line up the place values. When I multiply, I don't do that. I line up the numbers on the right. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, for 3 times 0.3, how many, are we making copies of something?
Yes.
We're making 3 copies of what this time? 3 copies of 3 tenths. So write that down. And I can show that by, again, making this time 3 tenths, and that's 1 copy. Here's 2 copies of those 3 tenths, and here's 3 copies of those 3 tenths. So after making 3 copies of the 3 tenths, what do I have?
9.
I have 9 whats? 9 tenths. Very good. And so to write that in standard form, I would write 0.3 times 3. Once again, I did not line up the place values because I'm not adding or subtracting. When I multiply, I line everything up on the right-hand side. And what's my answer? What's the product?
0.9 tenths.
Very good, 9 tenths. So we're thinking about 0.43 as 4 tenths and 3 hundredths to prepare us to draw those discs into the place value chart. So if I have 1 copy of 4 tenths, I know I need to draw 4 dots in the tenths column. And how many tenths in the hundredths column? How many dots? 3. Okay, how many copies have I drawn now? 1. And how many copies do I want? So I'm going to draw an exact copy of that. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3. Okay, now I have my 2 copies. So now I'm ready to see. How many ones do I have?
0.
Okay. How many tenths do I have? How many hundredths do I have?
6.
Good. Okay, so what this tells me is if I was writing all my numbers in a place value chart, I originally had 4, actually let me write this in a different color. Okay, I originally had 4 tenths and 3 hundredths, yes?
Yeah.
And if I made another copy of that and I added those up, do I have 86 hundredths?
Yeah.
Right? So you can see very clearly that when we're making copies, we're just repeatedly adding them, right? Now in standard algorithm, I would write it using my number, 0.43, and I'm making 2 copies of it. Again, you'll notice that I'm just aligning everything on the right, and my answer was 86 hundredths. Okay, so this is the equation. This is the answer in standard form. This is modeling it on a place value chart. You need to be able to do all 3 of those ways. Not only can we use a place value chart to show multiplication, we can use what's called an area model. I want everyone to write down area model in their notebook because you are going to be using this strategy many, many times this year, and it should already be familiar to you from last year. But in case it's not, we're going to go over it. We have the same exact problem here, 2 times 0.43, which as we know is 2 copies of 4 tenths and 3 hundredths, yes? An area model uses a rectangle. So you'll draw a rectangle that looks like this. And on the side here, you're going to write how many copies you're making. How many copies are we making? 2. Okay. And then we're going to separate it out into its units. We said that this was the same thing as 4 tenths and 3 whats? Hundredths. Okay, so copy it exactly like this into your notebook. Now, we know in order to find the area of this rectangle here, we have to multiply the 2 sides, right? So 2 times 4 tenths. If I have 2 copies of 4 tenths, what do I have? 8 tenths. Very good. Now to find the area of this rectangle over here, I would have to measure the side, multiply the 2 sides, which is 2 times 3 hundredths, yes? So if I have 2, which is how long this side is, times 3 hundredths, how many hundredths do I have?
6.
Okay. So inside each portion of the area model, you're writing that multiplication equation. When I say to write it exactly how you see it, I mean exactly. Then at the bottom, do you guys notice there's space here? What you're going to do is you're going to write those partial products or those parts of the area at the bottom. So 0.8, and then over here I would write 0.06. And then there's an equal sign because that's where we add up the partial products. 8/10